Thank you for joining us for 3Bs on the Law podcast, hosted by Trisha Barita, Camille Canali, and Susan Dawson. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only, not meant to provide legal advice, and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Also remember, laws change or they differ by jurisdiction, so this is not a substitute for seeking legal counsel in your jurisdiction on the current law applicable to you.
Hi, welcome back to 3Bs on the Law. There's been a big change this week. The CDC has announced an option to reduce quarantine for individuals who are asymptomatic or who have had contact with someone in COVID but do not have any symptoms. So, Camille, walk us through those new guidelines.
So, of course, the CDC starts by saying that your local public health department or authorities make the final decisions about how long quarantine should be, but they do have the option now to consider including stopping quarantine after 10 days without testing or after day 7 after receiving a negative test result, and the test has to be done on day 5 or later to go back after the 7 days. But after stopping quarantine, you should still watch for symptoms until 14 days after exposure. So, Trisha, why don't you tell us what you think that means? A little bit of a contradiction to me.
Right. How does that impact our businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, we're all waiting on pins and needles, the three of us for the FFCRA and whether or not that's going to continue. And here we have like a curveball from the CDC going, oh, wait a minute, you guys thought you knew how to bring people back to work. Just when you figured it all out, like, this is what we're kind of thinking now. It's a little confusing. The first thing you should do, of course, is realize that the CDC is recognizing the local health departments in every state as the really end-all authority. So go there before you do anything. Don't get all jumpy excited because really when you're looking at the whole picture, like we try to, you're still seeing that the 14 days still may exist and still be getting people sick. And so here down in Texas, we haven't updated our stuff since October. And so we're not as shiny, new, excited and jumping on this. It may come, but it's not there right now. And so if you're here in Texas, the guidelines still on these asymptomatic individuals is if they are in any close contact to a person who's lab confirmed to COVID or they think is COVID, then you still should be sticking with that 14-day quarantine. And then we're not talking about the symptomatic individuals here. We're talking about, the individuals not showing symptoms. What about you, Sue?
Right. Well, here in Illinois, we're still recommending 14 days. That's the state regulation. There are some county regulations, some city, city of Chicago has its own regulations, but 14 days is still the law of the land or the recommended law of the land in Illinois. But Wisconsin is following with the CDC guidelines and has released that same statement that you can reduce quarantine down to 10 days for asymptomatic individuals, or 7 days if after 5 days from your contact you get a negative test, and then you wait another 48 hours, and then you can go back. So that's what's going on here in Illinois and Wisconsin. What about California, Camille?
So in California, it's usually county by county if you have a health department or whichever health department applies. And LA County is still recommending 14 days. They haven't changed or updated it since this new CDC guideline came out. And I just tend to think that that's the smart thing to do, just because I know a lot of people become sick on that 10th through 14th day, which is why there was originally a 14-day quarantine. And, I am minimize your risk, as you guys know. And I just think it's the safest thing to do is to quarantine the longest, despite the fact that I know it keeps people out of work potentially for 3 or 4 days longer if they've been exposed.
But if you do want to change, if you're in one of those states that is going to follow that CDC guideline and reduce, it's also important to keep in know, or state or county, I should say, say your state doesn't regulate or follow CDC, but also your county, even in Wisconsin, you should be checking with your county. you also have to look at your policies, right? So let's say you're a Wisconsin business, you had all your policies said 14 days quarantine, and suddenly the state of Wisconsin says, no, you can do 10. Great. Okay, employee, you can come back on day 10, but your policy says day 14. So guess what? Just like you said, Tricia, we're all getting ready for expanding the FFCRA. Now everyone gets to redo their policies to make sure that it complies with 10 days if that's what you want, or the 7 days if your state and county and or city and our other local regulations allow it. So don't just hear the news that says, oh, it's now it's 10 days, which is what I have been hearing out there all over. Oh, CDC says 10 days. It's 10 days now. That's not how it works, right? You still have to check your state, check your county, and check with your employee policies. Right.
So I think it also helps to bookmark on your computer those health department websites that apply to you, so that you can just routinely make it a habit to go on and check for any updates on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's true. I think that the real confusing part about this is that, they came out with the FFCRA. We came out with a Q&A from the Department of Labor about paid sick leave related to this whole 14-day thing. Then we got regulations. That all happened last spring, ladies. And here we are. The CDC is been moving and shaking, changing that number. And the FFCRA is just sort of chilling. I mean, when you think about it, the employees are entitled to the to the 2 weeks, right? And so it's not really if the employer, is going to stick with the 2 weeks. It's still the paid sick leave law is still supporting that. It's just that the CDC is sort of making some adjustments for various reasons, but telling you, hey, look back at your, what's going on in your state and what the local guidance. I don't know. It's kind of funny. It's not like COVID's different. I don't think California COVID's different than Texas COVID and Illinois COVID, but you know what? This is the world we're living in right now. So your local guidance is going to be the key, at least right now. CDC is not taking a federal approach that the federal government is mandating.
Okay, you make a really good point. Sorry.
I have a pop quiz for you guys.
Ooh, pop quiz.
The vaccine in England this week. Do you know what the name of the first man in England who got the vaccine?
I do.
Do you know that?
Is this wait a minute. Do we raise our hand?
Showdown. All right.
Showdown point. If I know the answer, I know the answer.
Who was it?
William Shakespeare.
Awesome. Yay.
I said it first.
All right. Winner, chicken dinner. All right.
I want to go back to Tricia I think Tricia made a really good point, which honestly, I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective, which is FFCRA says if the doctor tells you have to quarantine, you have to quarantine. So if the doctor says 14 days, you still have to stay out for 14 days, right? So that's a really interesting point. The world of COVID keeps us on our toes, does it not? It's All right. Well, on that note, everyone, thanks for joining us again at 3Bs on the Law. See you next.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast of 3Bs on the Law. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast. We also welcome any comments. If you'd like to get in touch with us or suggest a future topic, you can email us at 3THREEBsonthelaw@gmail.com. And because we're lawyers, we need to remind you that this podcast is not meant to provide you with legal advice and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.